Radio Respicio!
Hi everyone and welcome back to another very interesting, very timely episode of Radio Respicio. So of course, kasama naman natin yung two lawyers we have here.
Attorney Eman.
And here.
Attorney Renz.
And of course, Attorney Lane here, your host. And at least I'm married. So, meron tayong perspective of someone in the married. Actually, you might be asking, ano ba tong topic na to? Well, to give you a little context, in the latest or our last Senate hearing, merong isang, I know there's two topics right now na super trending, pero may isang senator, si Senator Robin Padilla, he made a statement or a question, rather, na sobrang naging topic online. Can you refresh to our audience what question this is?
So yung sinabi ni Honorable Senator Robin Padilla is that dapat subservient yung mga wife dun sa husband nila.
According to the Bible, though.
He's Muslim, so
yeah.
Probably may basis. Well, I wouldn't know because I'm not a Muslim, so. But still, this is the 21st century, so medyo controversial yung statement na yan. And we will discuss the different concepts with respect to consent and marital rights and obligations, and specifically marital rape.
Exactly. So, actually, yung question na na-impose na sobrang nag-grabe na yung reaction ng public. That's one of his statements na dapat wives should submit to their husbands. There's another one, diba? He asked a question wherein na parang asking what will the husband do if they are in heat. Okay. So, and then wala sa mood yung wife. So, I guess it was a legitimate question. Ano nga ba?
Rooted on experience siguro.
Oh, siguro, rooted on experience. I mean, you guys wouldn't know, you're not married.
So attorney, hindi naman ang married.
But I guess, he has basis for his question. So, the public did not like that kind of questioning because it alluded to what attorney said as parang nag-i-imply siya that it's marital rape, especially because follow up niya ng statement that women should be submissive according to the Bible. Okay, so marital rape. Why do you think the public quickly alluded to marital rape? And why did they react that strong to it?
Well, I think kasi medyo we're at a crossroads regarding how we view public policy. I think we've discussed this in our numerous podcasts before. No? Clashing ng traditionalist views and yung liberal views, no? Of course, meron pa ring significant segment of our population which views marriage in the traditional patriarchal, toxic masculinity type of way, right? Where not so long ago, wives were treated as property of their husbands, right?
Right.
Wrongfully so, in my opinion, but still, naging ganun yung ano. But naging trending siguro because right now, dumadami na rin yung segment ng population natin, whether it's through exposure sa Western media or nagiging liberal lang, na medyo liberal na yung approach nila, not only when it comes to marriage, but relationships in general.
Right.
So I think kaya siya naging trend.
Right. But I think, if I remember it correctly, before kasi, yung nakalagay sa batas natin is that it is the responsibility of the wife to submit to their husbands, right? But I think it's been changed. Right now, the requirement is mutual support. Mutual na siya. So, hindi na siya imposed na obligation ng wife to do that. But, to be fair, gentlemen, there are still some provisions in the family code that do actually allude to that.
Yeah.
There are some provisions, like, for example, in parental authority over the child. If may disagreement, diba? According to the family code, if there is a disagreement, it is the father's decision. Right? So there are still a little bit.
May remnants.
Yeah, may remnants pa rin siya. So, I agree with you that siguro because people are now, they have stronger opinions to that.
Yeah.
And those opinions are actually allowed and respected and protected under the law. So, I guess lumalabas talaga yung feeling nila towards this topic. And before we proceed any further, because we really will be discussing this in depth, trigger warning. There will be a lot of mention of the word rape. So if you're not comfortable with that, maybe see you in the next episode.
Yeah.
Right. And also, this is in no way as a disrespect to any of our public officers, right? And their discussion with their sa hearing nila. This is really a legal discussion about it. And also, this is for the purposes of public knowledge.
Information.
Yes, there's also, like what Attorney Ranson said, there's also a lot of further trigger warning, things alluding to maybe submission of a woman to the man, like that. You will be discussing those topics also. So it's a trigger warning also because I know that's a trigger for some women who've been into abuse. So, full disclosure. All right, so let's get to it. Yes or no? Fast talk. Do you believe that a wife should serve her husband?
Serve yung keyword.
Serve is the keyword.
No?
No? Ikaw? It depends. Ganyan.
Sige, para hot take, yes.
Yes!
Pero may caveat. May caveat.
Ano sabi mo, Attorney? Baka cancel ka?
The wife should serve the husband, pero the husband should also serve the wife.
Right. Mutual. Okay. Do you believe that the wife should submit to her husband?
This is in the context of intimacy or in general?
In general. In the relationship. In the marriage.
No.
No. Ikaw?
No.
I think the keyword there is should. Should. Right. No, it's not a mandate. But, of course, if that is your dynamics in your family, that's yours.
Yeah, and it works and di naman toxic.
Yeah, exactly. The court does not, even the court, diba? They don't want to the intricacies of your family dynamics. But the point is, it is not something that is mandated to you or should be mandated to you. It is your choice. Right? Okay. What are some common misconceptions about consent that could lead to legal complications?
Well, consent is very varied. Meaning consent in a contract, consent to an agreement, or consent to sexual intercourse.
That's right.
So, merong mga scenarios, let's just say, nasa bar kayo. Tapos, before kayo nag-meet, nag-agree kayo na magkaroon kayo ng sexual intimacy. Then, after nyo punta sa bar, punta kayo sa motel or hotel or what have you.
Yeah.
Pero at that time, the girl resisted. Yeah. So, yung problem sa scenario na to, yes, there was an agreement prior to that, but di na siya nag-agree at that moment. So, would you still consider na merong consent? Of course, no. Kasi at that time, to start the act, sorry for the word, but yung sa beginning stage no, nag-stop na siya.
Yeah.
Nag-hesitate na siya.
Right.
And that hesitation is already a proof that there was no consent.
Right.
Even though na nag-agree kayo, na nasa part kayo na you want to have sexual intimacy. So yun yung nagkakaroon ng problems with respect to lawyers, with respect to the prosecutors na how do we interpret this? But regardless, the fact na hindi nag-consent at the time that it was beginning to be committed, wala na siyang consent.
Right. It's actually the total circumstances surrounding it, kasi even if before the act, the woman or the other party actually said yes, for example, but it can be seen in the circumstances that there's moral ascendancy, that there's pressure, there's like that. Kahit nag-yes siya, vitiated pa rin yung consent niya. Right. So, attorney, how does the revised penal code address issues of consent and sexual violence?
Yeah, well, regarding sa revised penal code natin specifically, I think there are two broad categories regarding consent. First, the revised penal code attaches consent to the age of the offended party.
So, age.
Yes, age of offended party. Of course, generally, if the offended party is under 16, that's already rape. There are complexities under the law, which we may or may not discuss later on. But the point is, under the revised penal code, consent is also attached sa age ng offended party.
And makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and there are cases na attached din sa age ng offender. But of course, those are complexities under the law. Suffice to say na merong age component. And then the next broad category regarding consent is yung consent na yung typically yung consent obtained through threat, force, intimidation, through pag-deprive of reason. So hindi siya necessarily attached sa age, yung second component ng consent. Pero ito yung I use the word classical na rape na kapag niloko mo siya, tinakot mo siya, binumbong mo siya. So medyo two broad categories siya, specifically regarding the revised penal code.
I see. And since we're on the topic of rape already, Attorney Eman, when and how is rape committed? The crime of rape committed?
So, how it is committed depends on the circumstances. Because sa law natin, may different stages yan. Right. For rape, dalawa lang, which is attempted and consummated stage. Attempted stage is nakikita natin sa circumstances how it led to attempted stage. Because ang attempted stage, wala pang carnal knowledge or wala pang sexual intercourse.
Hindi
natuloy. But there's also I'm not going to say controversial, but a different ruling with respect to rape by the Honorable Supreme Court. Here, what happened was that a guy was stalking a girl. And late at night, nakatulog na yung babae, and yung out of nowhere, yung babae late at night, nagising. And nakita niya yung stalker niya on top of her. And may parang nilalagay na parang handkerchief sa face niya para matulog siya or hindi siya magising. Nung nagising siya, nakita niya yun, then tinulok niya yung lalaki. The usual reaction, sinapat niya and everything, then nakatakas yung lalaki. So nag-file si girl ng attempted rape. When it was brought to the Supreme Court, unfortunately, hindi siya na-consider as rape. Considering the different circumstances that could be interpreted. I'm not saying na gawin niyo to because matagal bago ako makapunta ng Supreme Court. So baka sa RTC pala. So huwag niyong gagawin niyo. But what I'm trying to say is that the different interpretations is dependent on the entirety of this circumstances. Because how would you differentiate attempted rape from sexual assault from acts of lasciviousness?
Or malay mo, homicide nga yun. Papatayin niya. Pwede
So, how it is committed is based on the intent. And the intent can be seen from the acts that was committed. So, not all are rape, but there's always an appropriate penal law that will punish the crime that you committed.
Yeah. So, wag niyo pa rin gagawin. I can't believe we have to say that, no? But I think we have to be really express about our terms here. What are the when we're talking about rape, it's actually carnal knowledge. And correct me if I'm wrong, attorneys. Right now, rape is attached to can only be committed to a woman.
Under the new conceptualization of rape, yung classical rape natin through carnal knowledge can only be committed against a woman. But of course, meron pa ring rape na pwedeng i-commit against a man, pero yun yung insertion of body parts and other objects sa various orifices ng body. Pero yung classical rape na na-imagine natin na nasa show siguro, it's yung pinaka-common na interpretation rather regarding that is still against a woman. But for our male viewers there who are victims or natatakot na baka inisip niya walang protection under the law, meron, covered naman sila ng batas.
Right.
Pero hindi yun yung classical rape in the carnal knowledge.
So it's through sexual assault.
Yes. So regarding this, may different treatments yung revised penal code natin. Merong rape through carnal knowledge or sexual intercourse. Merong rape through sexual assault. Sexual assault means inserting the penis or any other or any object sa bibig or any orifice
That's sexual assault, ha?
Yes, this is sexual assault ng taon. So yung rape through carnal knowledge ang pinaka-prevailing interpretation nun is it can only be committed against a woman, right?
Yeah.
But of course, Attorney Eman pointed this out a while ago. As the law is worded, legally speaking, pwede. May opening, possibly, no? Pero again, the prevailing interpretation is it can only be committed against a woman. Pero yung rape through sexual assault, which is still rape, by the way, iba lang yung denomination niya under the law, pwede siyang i-commit against a man.
Right. Okay. So to discuss it further, to expound on it, rape through carnal knowledge or by carnal knowledge, pwede lang siyang makommit ng lalaki to a woman under certain circumstances. So, for example, it's rape by carnal knowledge if it's committed through force, threat, or intimidation. If yung offended party deprived siya of reason or unconscious siya, parang ganyan, it's still rape. Kasi hindi siya makaka-give ng consent. If there's force, if there's threat or intimidation, rape pa rin siya. Kasi hindi siya vitiated yung consent niya. Kasi merong threat, may intimidation, ganyan. If you employed fraudulent machinations or may grave abuse of authority, it's still rape. Why? Because it still affects yung consent.
Vitiated pa rin.
Hindi ng babae fully binigay yung consent niya to do that. And if the offended party, generally ngayon, is below 16,
yes,
cemented, and as we discussed earlier, it's going to be rape. Why? Kasi it is deemed by the court that a 16-year-old, there are certain exceptions, but generally, a 16-year-old is not yet capable to give consent. So actually, viewers, it still boils down to one thing, which is consent. That's the key word of rape. If walang consent for you to do any of those acts, if walang consent for you to gain carnal knowledge, then it is going to be rape. That's why consent is very, very important. Pero in the matter of rape.
Wala siya sa law, specifically, right? Yung word na consent.
Yeah. Actually.
But of course, to our viewers out there, hindi porket wala siya sa batas. It's still included there. You can deduce it from the circumstances under the RPC.
That's right. That's actually a good observation, attorney, kasi you can check out the law. Walang word na consent.
Walang word na consent.
It's not mentioned at all. But everything that's written there is still boils down to consent.
Yes, you can deduce. May imagine nyo naman, for example, may force. Ano yung, saan ina-apply yung force? Sa consent ng babae.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Even if the word is not there, guys, right? Parang implied pa rin yun sa batas.
That's right. And rape is not only committed to a woman. There is another kind of rape that can be committed to any person. And it can be, the perpetrator can be any person as well. So, ladies, yes, you can still be liable to commit rape against a man also. That rape is called rape by sexual assault. And attorney, can you expound to our viewers kung ano yung rape by sexual assault?
So, rape by sexual assault essentially means that you insert your penis, if you're a man, right, into any other person's mouth or anal orifice, or pwede kayong magpasok ng any other object or instrument sa genitalia or again, any other orifice ng isang tao.
What's orifice, attorney?
Orifice essentially, Tatagalogin natin, butas, right? So, for example, again, trigger warning to our viewers. For example, man inserts his genitalia sa mouth ng babae. Hindi siya carnal knowledge in the sense na hindi siya sexual intercourse, but it's still sexual assault kasi nagpasok ka ng penis sa mouth ng isang tao. For example, yung ibang sexual objects natin, right? You can insert it in other parts of your body. Pag ginawa mo yun, under the circumstances na minention now, in threat, force, intimidation, or pag-deprive of reason, rape pa rin siya, pero by sexual assault. So, basta may if you're gonna forget everything na sinabi ko, basta may pinasok ka sa isang tao, no, without his consent, his or her consent, rape through sexual assault siya.
Thank you, attorney. And ito, I have a very interesting topic because I want to relate this to 𝑉AUSY as well. So we've established that the rape can be committed against a woman and can also be committed against a man. But I want to relate this back to 𝑉AUSY, attorney Eman, kasi violence, psychological violence or psychological abuse is so broad, diba? So, and it's really dependent to the impact sa babae. Right? So, can the act, attorney, of forcing your spouse into sexual activity be considered as psychological abuse?
Well, it will depend. I'm not saying if there's marital rape, one instance of marital rape, hindi na siya magiging considered psychological.
Right, yeah.
It's still okay. But we can also look at the different circumstances leading to that marital rape. Because I assume, I'm not saying that I've experienced with disrespect kasi konti ito eh. This is not the usual cases. But what usually happens, I assume, is that pipilitin ng husband yung wife to have sex. But
or ipe-pressure, papa-guilt trip, yeah. Like,
so, those circumstances, yung nagdadambog, tinutulak, iniiwan, sinauwi.
What's the threat na magchichika ka?
Exactly. So, yun pumapasok yung psychological abuse. And as a result of that psychological abuse, you consented, you agreed to have sexual intercourse, but the act of going through the process para magawa yun, there's already psychological abuse, there's already force, there's already intimidation, there's already threats. So lahat yun, taking all those into account, can lead to a violation of the VAUSI or RA 9262. And that can be a ground for psychological abuse. Then, with respect to annulment, doon na magkakaroon ng different interpretation because annulment, specifically psychological incapacity,
right.
It's a hit or miss case, meaning there should be the totality of evidence that you have to prove na dapat maghiwalay na lang. Kasi yun din sasabihin ni court. Ano yung basis natin ba tayo sa psychological incapacity? Bakit kailangan kayo maghiwalay? Ano yung reason ba't kayo magkahiwalay? Hindi ba kayo marunong mag-comply sa marital obligations niyo, which is love, support, and living together? So, mahirap. But if you can gather all these circumstances that led to that scenario or how it impacted you, considering how it affected your marriage, then most likely than not, it can be applied as a ground for annulment for psychological incapacity.
That's right. And okay, attorneys, just very briefly, in your experience, how well do people understand their legal obligations when it comes to consent?
How well? Well, in my opinion,
in your experience,
for me, hindi pa ganun ka full yung understanding or appreciation of consent. Why do I say that? Because a lot of Filipinos have this preconceived notion pa rin na the only way for consent to be vitiated is express. Parang, halika dito, hilain mo. Or, may physical component, tama sa atin rin. Yun yung understanding ng ating Filipinos, no? Pero of course, as we've discussed, consent under rape, at least, under the revised penal code, is actually much more vivid, much richer than that, right? Kasi dito, pwedeng fraudulent machination. Pwedeng niloko mo. Pwede rin dito grave abuse of authority. Teacher ka ba? Or what, no?
May ascendancy ka.
Yes, may ascendancy ka. In that case, kasi wala kang physical exertion, right? Pero still, vitiated yung consent. So I guess yung misconception na purely physical lang ang pag-vitiate ng consent is the reason why I can say na hindi pa buo yung understanding ng Filipinos regarding consent.
Right. Ikaw, Attorney Aman.
But to also add to what Attorney Renson said is that there are instances that the rape becomes normal. Yun yung masakit. Or yun din yung sorry for the viewers, but as lawyers, we see these cases and we understand these cases. And due to the fact na ilang years na nangyari, more than 100 times na nangyari, so akala nung probably pamangkin, stepdaughter, or daughter mo talaga, normal na siya naman. And remember that each sexual intercourse is one count for rape. So kahit na, let's say, 5 times ka ni-rape in one day, 5 counts yun. And yun yung medyo masakit on our part because we will be handling the case. We will be reading the documents. And hindi na malaman nung victim if it's normal or not.
It's learned.
Exactly. So, doon nagkaka-problem dun sa consent. Kasi like, sasabihin niya, for the multiple times na nangyari siya, okay na sa kanya. Because he or she thinks it's normal.
Right.
But hindi pala.
Yeah.
So, sasabihin nung opposing counsel mo, yung lawyer ng kalaban mo, look, judge, hindi naman siya tumanggi. I mean, willing niya binigay. Because nasira na yung mindset on what consent is.
Yeah.
So, yes, that there is the complications of what consent is with respect to these crimes. But remember na consent is dapat freely given.
Yeah.
Hindi dapat yung nakasanayan mo na, hindi dapat yung may kapalit. So,
that's definitely for me, attorney, yung in my experience, meron sobrang ano nila na misconception when it comes to consent. That is yung akala nila if you are in a relationship or if you're married to a person, that excuses unconsented sexual intercourse. Actually, we have a term for that, diba? It's called the sweetheart defense, diba? But it's not actually acknowledged by the court. Kasi nga, kahit married kayo, kahit in a relationship kayo, consent is still very important. And because I personally heard that na excuse na parang, hey, but no, it wasn't rape. We were in a relationship, like that. So, parang automatic siya for some people that if you're in a relationship, it cannot be rape. But that's actually wrong.
Yeah.
And another thing is that consent can be withdrawn. So it doesn't even matter if kasal kayo in there, just dating, it's a one-night stand. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. Before the consent, anytime sa,
So, that's for our viewers, of course, para educated kayo. Kahit making out attorney late, pasok na doon.
Yeah.
Even before nun, pag nag-no ka,
na
rin siya.
It should be stopped.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, there are a lot of I've seen that discussion. And ang grabe yung discussion yun. Kasi men would say, usually men would say na parang, andun ka na eh. Andun ka na in the moment, you're making out like that, but then hindi pa pala mag-lead sa ganun. I think that's a really low way to look at men. If you say that kind of reasoning. Kasi men are logical beings. Yeah, they are capable with self-restraint. Diba? I think it's disrespectful to men in general for you to say that men will not be able to control themselves. If like that. So yeah, consent can be withdrawn. And another thing na I think I want to emphasize is if the person is too drunk to give consent, you don't go through with it. I think we discussed this earlier. What if we go, like, man and woman goes out and then they do intend to get drunk. They do intend to part.
Yes.
And then the woman tells the guy, hey, let's get drunk. And then let's have
After,
let's do the deed after. But she's too drunk. As in to the point she's unconscious, she can't make decisions. And then the guy still went through with it. Is that rape?
Yes. Very clear naman yung nakalagay sa batas, no? Specifically with that, otherwise unconscious yung nakalagay. So even if binigay yung consent beforehand,
kahit hindi unconscious, kahit intoxicated.
Ayun, yun din. Yeah. So, walang distinction na ganun sa revised penal code. Pero of course, my interpretation as a lawyer is dapat nag-consent ka, alam mo yung gagawin mo specifically.
Right.
Yun kasi parang nag-consent ka, nag-party ka, you never know how. Right? Kahit alam mo malalasing ka or what, no? And then, from a policy perspective, napaka-delikado to uphold that.
Right. Yeah.
Na pag nag-agree ka na lang beforehand, kahit lasing ka, di ba? So, yeah. Mali po yung interpretation na yun, guys. We can't stress that enough. Even if nag-consent kayo beforehand, na magpa-party kayo, then after gagawin nyo yun, it's still rape. Yeah. Still a case of rape.
Yeah, definitely. Gentlemen, let us pretend that we're in a hearing. So, very briefly, it's a legitimate question. Diba? It's a legitimate question. What will a married man do if he is in heat and his wife does not want to do the deed?
Well, number one, to all husbands out there, respect your wife, right? Your love for your wife should take precedence over any sexual longing or desire you may have. And then number two, of course, there are other legal and more appropriate ways with which you can satisfy your sexual longing. Ang daming pwedeng gawin dyan. So, yeah, respect your wife and, I don't know, keep it in your pants.
I think you should clarify yung ibig mo sabihin na ang daming gawin dyan because we don't tolerate cheating, That's not what he meant.
Yes, yung caveat doon is there are more legal and appropriate ways to satisfy your sexual longing. So just find that. It could be a hobby or what have you. But at the end of the day, you should respect your wife.
Yeah.
No means no.
Yeah.
Yes lang dapat yung sagot niya.
Okay, I think...
Well, let's say if I'm in court and yung accused or the husband is testifying to be essential and defense. Una ko lang tatanungin dyan is, number one, Mr. Witness, have you gone through puberty? May puberty ka ba? Sasabihin, of course, yes.
Yeah.
And during the puberty stage, how did you relieve yourself of
the urges?
The urges or your lust? Sasabihin niya na masturbation or what happened? So I'm just gonna ask, during the time that you're married to your wife, did you ever masturbate? I wouldn't know what the answer niya, but let's say for presumably yes. Then why at that time you forced your wife to have sexual intercourse with you and not resort to masturbation or watch porn or buy magazines or what? Why did you have to rape your wife? I'm not saying that prostitution, pornography, or masturbation is okay. But my point is, why did you have to force another individual, even your wife, to have sexual intercourse with you? So it's not logical. If you have other means to relieve your lust or your sexual desires, I understand, probably stress ka, and di mo makontrol yung sarili mo, but to force someone, regardless of sino man yan, more so na asawa mo, it doesn't justify that. Hindi ibig sabihin nun pwede mong gawin. That's why, yung sinabi Attorney Renzo, there are other means. And this means doesn't necessarily equate na valid yung ginawa. So it's still invalid regardless. But you don't have to force any other person to have sexual intercourse with you.
Great. I wanted to share, on my end, I want to share a case. I think it's one of the favorite cases of law students in general. I think, you know what I'm alluding to, it's Chim Choi. You remember that case? So basically, yung case na yun, nagsasabi na this guy, they never had sex throughout they never consummated their marriage, basically. They never had sex, and then the wife, this time it's the wife, who filed for nullity of marriage. It was actually granted. And I've seen that kind of acts replicated so many times. Diba? Na parang the other party does not want to consummate the marriage or ganyan. It becomes a ground for psychological incapacity. So it's not like parang you're not empathizing or you're not saying that sexual relations in a marriage is not important. Actually, it consummates. The sexual relations consummates the marriage. So it is important. But, and yun nga, if wala talaga, hindi talaga, you can probably explore that option. Maybe your partner may not be psychologically incapacitated to consummate the marriage or something like that. But in what way you look at it, it does not justify rape.
Yes.
At all. Right? So, no matter how much you look at it, rape is just not excusable at all. It's a crime. Yeah. All right. So, last question. What steps can a spouse take if they feel that their partner is forcing them into sexual activity? And this time, I'm not just talking about forcing a woman, but the spouse. Men or women in general, what steps can they take if they feel that their partner is forcing them into sexual activity?
Well, number one, get out of the house. Your first and foremost priority is, of course, your safety. If you have daughters, of course, and children, sama niyo rin sila. Nag-aalis kayo, no? Because typically, as lawyers, we know this, typically kasi pag ganitong cases, magbubunga siya ng other violence. Unfortunately, pag hindi na pagbigyan or, as Attorney Eman alluded to a while ago, magiging cyclical kasi yung violence, right? So, get out of the house, number one. Number two, pumunta kayo sa barangay nyo po and PNP offices.
Yeah.
Meron silang women's desk doon. Pwede kayong patulong. Tutulungan nila kayo mag-file ng pwedeng vowsy case or pwedeng rape, attempted or consummated, no?
Yeah.
So that's number one. And then number two, again, if you have the presence of mind to do this, because understandably you are victims, right?
Yeah.
But if you can, of course, gather evidence also. Meron bang pasa sa'yo, picturean mo na bago mawala. Meron ka bang kalmot, picturean mo na, magpa-medical legal ka na bago mawala. So, get out of the house, seek help, and gather and preserve evidence.
Right.
Well, if your spouse is forcing you to have sexual intercourse, and let's say wala ka ng choice, let's just say na nagawa na. Likewise, with attorney Renson, umalis na kayo. Pag-file na kayo ng complaint. And ito yung nagkakaroon ng problem usually sa mga ganitong cases. Naaawa sila.
Yes.
Because rape is one of the heaviest crimes in the Philippines. So, reclusion perpetual. No bail yan. So, kulong agad yan. And dahil spouse nila, naawa sila. Sasabihin na lang nila kay prosecutor na, prosec, iskal, hindi na lang ako mag-refine ng kaso. Naawa kasi ako. Yes, forgiveness is allowed, but the fact that it happened doesn't justify na dapat hindi niya i-serve yung time na ginawa niya. So, yes, it's okay na maawa kayo. It's okay to forgive them. But by letting him free from the confinements of the persecution or prosecution, hindi na justify, hindi nagkakaroon na help sa society, because if kaya niyang gawin sa iyo, what more dun sa ibang tao na hindi naman niya kilala? No, marami din kaming cases na nangyari yun, and sadly, that's their decision, that's their prerogative, that's their right, so wala tayong magagawa.
No?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately.
For our last words, guys, I want to share something sa viewers natin kasi it really presents black and white. It's super complex. And one of the consultations that I actually experienced is parang hindi na ma-identify which one was consensual and which one was rape. That's the complexity kasi when you're in a marriage. And especially if you have the mindset that you need to submit to your husband. You love your husband. So, there are times na gusto mo naman talaga that you really wanted to have sexual relations, sexual intercourse with your husband. So, there are moments of na consensual siya. But there are moments that dumababa yung esteem mo because you really feel forced to do it. And parang dun ko nakita in that consultation na grabe no, marital rape is actually it's so, and it's so complicated to actually call the person that you love, or, diba, a rapist. To actually square that in your head. But there are times na ginusto ko naman eh. And that's real because you're married to this person, you love this person. But there are times that, and it's not just actually, ito pa guys, it's not just actually the deed itself, but acts in the deed that you're not comfortable to do. Yun. And actually, that's the issue of one of my clients that this person does not want to do. So, hindi niya, yung consent niya, hindi niya binigay doon. Like that. It's very complicated. It's not black and white.
Well, I think we also have to clarify that consent doesn't end when it was committed.
Yeah.
Meaning, let's just say, sorry for the word, na ginagawa niya na. Then, in the middle of it, sinabi nung babae, ayoko na.
Or masakit. Yeah.
Tapos hindi yung pa rin stop.
Yeah.
That can still constitute as rape.
Yes.
Because consent is the entire period na nagkakaroon kayo ng sexual intercourse.
Right.
So kahit na nag-consent siya sa beginning, then sa middle, sabi niya, wag na. Ginawa mo pa rin. Rape ka na. Kaya, consent is very, very important. And that's the the ultimate element na kailangan ma-prove or ma-disprove, if you may call it, sa rape.
Yes. So, I mean, with that complexity, I think for our viewers, right? I think if you're gonna take anything away from this podcast, right? Just remember na no means no, and yes should be freely given. It should be unqualified, and dapat, as Attorney Eman pointed out, it should be for the entire duration of the sexual act.
Yeah.
The moment yes is withdrawn, it's automatically a no.
Right.
And you should stop.
And to obtain that yes, you should have not done anything.
Yes.
Fraudulently gain that kind of
Walang force, walang abuse.
intimidation, yeah.
Wala.
Yeah. Another last case that I wanted to share with you, attorneys. I think it's also there's rape, but then there's marital rape. And the marital rape is a little bit more complicated. So the wife did not want to continue with having the sexual relations or doing the deed with the husband, but the husband has been threatening the wife with videos that they made in the past. Ganyan. So that is also rape.
Yes.
Because again, vitiated yung consent niya. Of course, she had to abuse. There is
intimidation.
So yeah.
May additional crime.
Additional crime ka pa. May additional crime ka pa.
Photo and video voyeurism.
Yes. So guys, thank you. If you're still here, you've joined us until the very end, then thank you so much. I hope that you really learned something from here. We're trying to be really careful and sensitive with the words that we're trying to use. No? So it's not as explicit. And we hope that nevertheless, we conveyed ko ng gusto namin sabihin. The case of rape is hard in itself. Case of marital rape is even a little bit more complicated than that. So thank you for joining us. Once again, it has been another episode of Radio Respicio.
Radio Respicio!